Hello fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today we're going to be going over my horror library. We're going to be looking at titles that begin with the letter K. Well, last names of authors that begin with the letter K. This is absolutely the biggest letter in my horror library. There's so much, specifically because Stephen King, my collection is huge. It has its own bookcase, and it's just, there's so many Stephen King books, so we've got a lot to go through there. Plus, Stephen King was such a big author for me that I'm going to have a lot to say about each book, at least the early ones. So I'm breaking the Stephen King books will be their own thing, but the letter K will have like 6 videos in it, I swear, because I'm going to go over the other things in the letter K plus all the Stephen Kings. So we're going to be sitting on this letter for a while as we're going through the horror library. But let's we'll start with the paperbacks that I have for the letter K. And the first one I have is something called Visions of Terror, Because They Come True by William Katz. What is more terrible than a nightmare? Deadly broken glass, a car crash, an explosion are part of Annie McKay's dream world. Ever since the illness that almost blinded her, the 7-year-old has had disastrous nightmares, but these are visions of terror. They all come true, so when Annie dreams of her own murder, her mother is forced to take action, alone, because not only does she know who the murderer is, but she is beginning to understand the truth behind her daughter's visions of terror. Sounds like early 70s, or late 70s, early 80s goodness. I have no idea who William Katz is, but I do recognize the cover of this book, and I feel like this exact picture was used somewhere on a John Saul novel. I don't know why, but I'm thinking John Saul. It doesn't tell me who did that amazing cover, which is too bad. Yeah, this is a beat-up book, but I'm going to read it someday because it looks interesting. Next, I have The Spell, and it's by Ed Kelleher and Harriet Vidal. And these guys also wrote Prime Evil. The fatal attraction was magic. And this is in insane condition. There's one crease on the spine. Other than that, it looks like it's completely new. This is a leisure book. Looks like late 80s, early 90s to me. Let's see. July 1990. Yeah. It does not tell me who did that beautiful cover, but it's a very cool cover. Handsome and popular, Christopher Simpson knew that it was only a matter of time before he got the lucky break he needed to make him a hot new star. Then he met Cora. Charmed by her beauty, enthralled by her mystique, she became his all-consuming obsession. Day and night she haunted his mind and invaded his dreams. His passion was uncontrollable, his love not returned, but he was determined to make the strangely aloof Cora his, even if he had to use the spell. Once cast, it would make his life a living hell. Woohoo! What can you say? There it is. Wavelengths by Daniel M. Klein. This looks 90s to me. Let's see if I'm wrong. 1982. Way off on that. 1982. This looks like medical horror. A nightmare world of medicine gone mad. A gem of plausible evil. Welcome to paradise. The brilliant Dr. Elizabeth Saxon has found the secret of renewed romance. After 1 week at her exclusive Institute of Marriage, couples fall passionately back in love. But something is wrong. Large amounts of a dangerous new drug are disappearing. An hysterical widow is confined in a mental hospital after her husband's body is mysteriously exhumed and decapitated. It all finally begins to add up for Dr. Wade Hobson, who risks his job and his life to find out until his turn for final therapy. I love 80s horror. I love the blurbs on the back of 80s horror. I love the covers of 80s horror. All right, next is Jeffrey Konvitz. And I know a lot of people rave about this novel. It's called The Sentinel. I think it's religious horror. It's got a keyhole cover with awesome step back art there. Lots of scary, scary people reaching the Sentinel. Cool. A novel that takes you to the very boundaries of belief and one shattering step beyond. The Sentinel. A beautiful young model, the old brownstone apartment she simply had to have, the grotesque blind priest who watched down on her day and night from an upper story window, the pair of perverted creatures who wanted her to join their circle, the mad little old man who gave her tea and sympathy, the cool, calculating, supremely rational lover who first mocked her fears, and the secret you will never be able to forget even if you try. Maybe it's not religious horror, but it looks good. I'm sure that we'll do that for Secret Society Red someday. Also by Jeffrey Konvitz, we have The Guardian. So he's got a creepy priest on one novel and a creepy nun on the other. Maybe that's why I think it's religious humor. There is step-back art here. You're about to experience the most paralyzing terror ever unleashed. The final hour of evil, one step beyond the very boundaries of belief. It has already begun. The riveting novel by the author of the million-copy bestseller, The Sentinel. Evil is raging on the 20th floor of an apartment building on the west side. In an open window, a hideous blind nun perpetually gazing. Well, that seems the same as the priest. And why does he keep saying blind people are grotesque or hideous? That's weird. A body burned beyond recognition, then 2 more murders, strangely connected, and the discoverer, a beautiful young woman, S.A.'d, uses a different word there. I just don't want to get demonetized here. Her innocent child exposed to horror, her husband furious, relentlessly set on revenge, a cool, calculating, laughing priest intent on saving more lives from destruction. And so it begins, powerful, satanic, terrifying, a time you will never forget. Sounds like he had some obsessions, specifically religious people who are blind and always looking out windows, which doesn't make any dang sense. All right, that's all the paperbacks. Let's move on to the hardbacks. All right, my first hardbacks are by a horror writer with the last name King, but not Stephen King, his wife Tabitha. We have Caretakers by Tabitha King. This is a first edition. I think it came out right around the same time as Firestarter. Let me check. 83, so actually around the time of Cujo is when this came out. I haven't read this one. I've only read one Tabitha King novel, which I did enjoy. So I do want to read more Tabitha King in the future. This is the one that I have read, and that is Small World by Tabitha King. And this is her first novel. Let's see. This probably came out around Firestarter. Yeah, this came out right around Firestarter. This is a messed up novel. It's like kind of science fiction-y. If I remember correctly, and I was a teenager when I read this, I think the protagonist, or the antagonist, is a female. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's a male. I can't remember. Anyway, this person shrinks people to get revenge on them and then messes with them as a form of torture. It's a crazy idea and a really, really good read. One-on-One. I wasn't familiar with this novel at all when I was into my Stephen King phase in the late 80s and all through the 90s. This looks like it was published later, so I don't know if this is good or not, but this is a first printing, and it came out in 1993. Is this a first printing? Yeah, this is a first printing. I think this is her second novel, maybe? No, this might be her third. The Trap. I think this is a book club edition. It is a book club edition. And I've never read it, but I would like to give it a try someday. I think it's hard to be a horror writer at all, because you're constantly compared to Stephen King. I think Tabitha King wrote more thrillers, less supernatural, but it would be even harder, I think, to be the wife of Stephen King and try to write in a similar genre. Or to be the child of Stephen King. Here we have The Curator by Owen King. This is one of Stephen King's sons. Of course, his other son I've already talked about is Joe Hill, who changed his last name. The Curator feels a little bit like Owen King somehow brought a curiosity cabinet to life. There are terrors here, but also marvels and delights, and a set of the most interesting characters I've met in some time. Put the curator on the same shelf as other classics of the uncanny and uncategorizable, like Susanna Clark's Piranesi and Mervyn Peake's Gormenghast. I loved it. That quote alone is why I grabbed this. I need to read more of Stephen King's children. I haven't read any yet, but everything about this feels like he's definitely different than Joe Hill. Not as attached to horror, and maybe closer to fantasy. It begins in the city nicknamed the Fairest. I don't know. I think I'm gonna like this a lot, and I'm looking forward to reading it. Another Owen King double feature. Oh, these are both first editions. He's got quite the writerly family. There's some damage on this. This has been wet once before. Too bad, yeah. It didn't really... Oh no, I gotta get another copy of this. This has been wet at some time. I probably got it like that because, I mean, nothing else is wet around it. Didn't damage anything else, but yeah, there you go. Some Owen King. No, wait. I think we only have one more author to go over, and that's Dean Koontz. Dean Koontz is a weird one for me because back in the day when I loved reading horror, of course, Stephen King was all I wanted to read through Stephen King, just eating him up. When I couldn't read Stephen King, my next choice was either Dean Koontz or John Saul. Dean Koontz did not age very well for me, personally, but I also prefer supernatural to thriller. So I don't know if it's a fair... I'm not the right person to judge, so I kept these Dean Koontz because I want to have a copy of all the books that I've read in my life. But yeah, I don't see myself doing a reread of these anytime soon. So yeah, let's look at some Dean Koontz. Now, that being said, Dean Koontz wrote a lot of science fiction at the beginning of his career, so I might be reading some Dean Koontz science fiction. The first one I have is The Voice of the Night, and this is by Brian Coffey, who is Dean Koontz. Dean Koontz had a tendency to write under a lot of pseudonyms. I think specifically because he didn't know... He was jumping genres a lot back in the day, so I think his idea was to have a different name for each genre. Love that cover. Like the 80's kid with a bike, but it's like spooky. Super cool. I've got a soft spot in my heart for old Dean Koontz. Maybe one day I will read some more of these. Phantoms. And it's strange. I'm not going to talk much about these. I don't remember a great deal about them. Just I know the ones that I read. I remember one about somebody being chased in a car. Anyway, yeah. Phantoms. And these are all kind of his late 80s, early 90s run. The Servants of Twilight, which is when I was reading the most. Watchers. This is the cover I remember the most, but I don't remember exactly what it's about. This is the title I remember liking the most, The Bad Place. Oh, these are all book clubs. The Bad Place is a first edition. I had a lot more of these, but I went and got rid of every one of them except for the ones I'd read. Cold Fire, Hideaway. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that one to stick. Yeah, I will. All right. And the most interesting book in my Dean Koontz collection is a book called Twilight Eyes, but this is not... I don't know if this was published first. I don't think so. This must be a later printing, but I mean, this is some kind of special edition. What I love about it is that it's signed by Koontz, and it was signed in 85. I don't know, can you see that? Oh, it's over here. It was signed by Koontz, and it was signed in 85. Land of Enchantment, that's strange. Is that the name of the publisher? Yeah. That's also the state motto for the state I live in, New Mexico. Weird. Anyway, I'm glad to have Stephen King's. I wish I had Stephen King's signature. I'm glad to have Dean Koontz's signature because he really, truly was important to me as a young man. The art in this looks incredible, and it is done by illustrations by Phil Parks. So there you go. Twilight Eyes by Dean Koontz. And there you have it. That is the everything in my library, in my horror library, by authors whose last name begins with K. Expect in the next month or so the first look at my Stephen King library. I'll be going through his earliest publications in that video, talking about kind of what they meant to me. And I've actually reread some of them recently, so I'll probably be talking about kind of what the rereads meant to me as well. All right, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.